Hello students. These series of videos will be covering the life cycles of the different organisms that we're talking about that are found in your botany atlas. Okay, this is an extremely valuable resource for students in this course. One of the things that I'll be using it for is to cover how the organisms we talk about reproduce. And things I want you to pay attention to as we go over that are the ploidy levels, meaning are they haploid or are they diploid? Look at when mitosis and meiosis are occurring. Look at how the asexual and sexual reproduction life cycles operate within themselves and how they relate to one another. We'll be talking about golden algae, dinoflagellates, and diatoms. And I'll be going through this book to illustrate how they reproduce. And I'll be going through and pointing out some of the specific structures that you need to know, some of the specific stages you should remember, and other unusual pieces of anatomy or things like that that are unique to those organisms, or at least to the groups to which those organisms belong. These little videos, but most particularly this book that I'm just kind of walking you through with these videos, this is being created because you will be tested specifically on life cycles, and those will sometimes be even you drawing a complete life cycle from memory on an exam or something like that, or at least filling in some of the blanks that we've left for you. And that's because this information is very important in the understanding of how these organisms reproduce, and there's also something where you can kind of follow as we talk about how these plants evolved and these plants speciated and things like that, how the way that they reproduce interacts with that information. So just like with all videos, if you've got any questions or anything like that, feel free to ask. Typically in the future, you're just going to get the videos that produce the information that you need to cover, but I'm just giving you a little heads up on some of the things that you need to know. Okay, I have a whiteboard that I went through one of the organisms, and I don't know if it honestly was particularly helpful. Okay, and I was thinking about doing this and just pointing it out, but what I'm actually going to do for you is I'm just gonna have this on a slide and talk you through it.
Okay, class, welcome to the recording of me talking my way through the life cycles of some of these individuals. Some of them I'm going to go into detail with. Some of them, like the dinoflagellate, I know a basic amount about, and will be translating that information to you hopefully. So dinoflagellates are sometimes behind some of those harmful algal blooms that you see. And so we see that there's a few different stages where they're in a spore. This particular right here, this is a spore that can last for months, years, waiting for optimal conditions to germinate. And same with this spore as well. And so what they'll do is when the conditions are right, they will come through this process and they will germinate. And whether it's through light or temperature, nutrients, and they have all these protective layers. This excuse me, this dinoflagellate then comes out, it undergoes meiosis, and you see it can go through this dormant spore stage and then go to these isogamete stage, where here again, since it's gone through meiosis, we've got a 1N or haploid organism, and they'll come together and they'll fertilize and create a zygote, and then that zygote enlarges and it forms this spore. And again, this is when conditions maybe right in here somewhere, the conditions are such that they no longer are doing mitosis and asexually reproducing, and they feel but they receive signals that the conditions aren't perfect. They fertilize, form this 2N zygote, it enlarges and gets to be this spore to where they can again stay dormant until conditions are ideal. So just notice where meiosis and mitosis happen and the places in which the ploidy levels are indicated, so whether they're N or 2N. Okay, here we have something that I think is a little more straightforward, and this right here is the Chrysophyta or golden algae. And so we've got this zoospore, and this zoospore can germinate, and it comes down here, it germinates, and it makes these little filaments, okay? And these filaments can spread and grow, and those filaments can then produce this, I guess you could call it a bud, with a zoospore on it that'll come off and perpetuate this asexual life cycle over and over and over again. And these are N, or haploid, okay? But this filament can also then form an oogonium. You're going to want to know, oh, you're going to want to know that. Nope. And then it'll also form this antheridium or antheridial branch. Okay. And the oogonium forms an egg that is N. All right, I'll get it. And then the antheridium forms an N haploid, and you get these sperm. Okay. So the egg and the sperm, notice we've got a little tube here section where the sperm are coming out, and they're going to do syngamy or fertilization and form a zygote, which is 2N. So right here we have 2N, and then from there meiosis occurs, and there are little haploid organisms that can create these filaments and continue and perpetuate the life cycle sexually. All right, for whatever reason, it seems like it's not recording my pen strokes, so I will draw on this, but I'll also talk it through better. So in the bottom right of these bacillus-shaped diatoms, we've got a zygote and an oxospore, and we can start there this time. And the zygote is a diploid 2N stage, and then so is this oxospore, where it can remain not indefinitely, but it can remain for an extended period of time until the conditions are right, and then they go through these stages in oxospore germination until we end up with the initial diploid 2N cell. And then these go through mitosis, and they duplicate and they duplicate and they duplicate. And then eventually these autosomal diploid cells form gamete-producing cells that can then undergo meiosis, and we have those isogametes that are haploid. So we see that of these, the major reproduction that's happening here on the upper left is happening with diploid 2N cells, and that only when it is time to reproduce do they turn to these isogametes as N. And if we go here to the right to these hamburger-shaped diatoms, these literally in the left, these look like hamburgers, but they aren't. We've got oxospores and zygotes here in the bottom right, and so again we can form this oxospore, and it can stay in that stage, or it can form this mature oxospore. And again you can see, just like on the other side, we're forming this silicate outer portion, and we can turn into these 2N initial cells, and then from these autosomal 2N cells where they where they can undergo mitosis to divide. Then there is meiosis, where there is a sperm and an egg formed from these formed from these formed from these 2N diploid cells. They form to haploid sperm N and haploid egg N. They fertilize and then return to the zygote stage.